No, sir, man. I don't like that crap. I'm a rocker, dude, through and through. Here's my favorite bands. AC/DC, Van Halen, not Van Hagar, Skinner, Def Leppard.
All right.
Let's go!
So, I've talked a lot about books on this channel, but I have not really talked about music on this channel. And I got to thinking, you know, perhaps I ought to remedy that because I have musical opinions just like I have literary opinions. And I thought it might be fun to make a video in which I list my favorite albums of all time. And that is what I'm here to do today. But before we get into the list, some preliminaries. One, this is always subject to change. This is just the list of my favorite albums at present. Nothing is forever set in stone, I suppose. Alterations could always be made in future. So like I say, this is just my favorite albums as of right now. And two, prepare yourself for a not terribly broad variety of musical genre in this listing, because my musical tastes are pretty rock and metal oriented. Like I've seen other people list their favorite albums and they have such eclectic, such varied tastes. They'll have something by like John Coltrane and Miles Davis, and then something by like Bach and Wagner. Nah, don't expect any of that on this listing. Like I say, my musical tastes are pretty rock and metal oriented. Now, if you're out there like, okay, if it's just going to be a bunch of rock and metal music, at least tell us you've got some artsy stuff on the list like Tool or Godspeed You Black Emperor. Nope, none of that either. Some of these albums you may be like, really? And, you know, there's really no like objective criteria for this ranking, for this listing. These are just, you know, the albums that I, you know, like to jam the most. There's no real criteria here except if the songs are catchy, if I can, you know, just jam these things over and over and, you know, continually enjoy them. That's pretty much all it is. So like I say, prepare yourself for a not terribly great variety of musical genre. And again, some of these albums you may question like, really? But, you know, it is what it is. So without further ado, let's get into my favorite albums of all time at present. So before we get into the list proper, we have some honorable mentions here. First up, we have War is the Answer. I don't want to talk about it. Next, we have Disintegration by The Cure, just all-time goth rock classic. This is probably the quintessential Cure album. I know some people might say Pornography, but for me, it's Disintegration all day long. Just has some of the best songs that The Cure ever put out. Fascination Street being one of my absolute favorites. Definitely my favorite off this album. Then, of course, you have Pictures of You. I mean, just one of The Cure's biggest, you know, songs they ever put out. But also some of the deeper cuts like Homesick. Oh my goodness, that song. Like, this is just, you know, just an all-time classic of goth rock. This was The Cure at the height of their powers. Just absolute masterpiece. Absolute masterpiece. Next, we have Songs of Faith and Devotion by Depeche Mode. Now, I know a lot of people, most people perhaps, would say that Violator is Depeche Mode's greatest album, but I might just have to dispute that because I think that Songs of Faith and Devotion is an absolute powerhouse of an album. Actually, I could perhaps even have put Ultra on here instead because I think that album is also a powerhouse work in its own right. But I went with Songs of Faith and Devotion because I think this album is a fantastic example of a band adapting to the times remarkably well. Like when the 90s rolled around, there were a slew of bands who jumped on the alternative bandwagon, but I don't think any of them did it quite so well as Depeche Mode with this album because it feels different, but it also feels natural. Like it doesn't feel forced. It doesn't feel like selling out, as they say. It feels like a natural progression of their sound with a harder edge. It's kind of a moodier album. It's kind of darker than their previous work, but I think it is just pulled off remarkably well. That opening track, I Feel You, I mean, good Lord, what a song. And then Walking in My Shoes, that's got to be one of Depeche Mode's greatest songs. And also the deeper cuts on here, like One Caress. Fellas, let me tell you, One Caress, that song is an all time classic panty dropper of a song. You put that on, you turn the lights down low, again, just all time classic panty dropper of a song. This album is really a masterpiece, I think, and I would argue that it at least can be argued that this is perhaps Depeche Mode's greatest album. I know Violator overshadows it, and that's a great album in its own right. I mean, I like that album a lot, but for me, this is like probably my favorite Depeche Mode album. It's a masterpiece. I think it is just an absolute masterpiece. Dark, moody, again with a harder edge to it, but it comes off so well. It really does. So yeah, Songs of Faith and Devotion, Depeche Mode, classic album in my opinion. Next, we have The Pale Haunt Departure by November's Doom. Probably the heaviest thing on here. This album rocked me when I first heard it many years ago as a kid because I had never heard anything like this. It was heavy as all hell, but it was also darkly beautiful. And I could appreciate that even then, but I can appreciate it even more now, I think. November's Doom is a band which I don't think ever got the level of recognition which they really deserved. I mean, they're still out there, they're still making music, but I don't really think they ever attained the level of popularity which they really merited. I don't know if any of their albums have ever like charted or anything, but this album, The Pale Haunt Departure, was for me a pivotal album in my evolution as a music listener because once again, I'd never heard anything like this. This is probably my favorite death metal album, and I'm really not a huge fan of death metal, but I am a fan of November's Doom. Paul Coeur, I think that's how you pronounce his name. Paul Coeur is probably my favorite death metal vocalist because uh, that dude's pipes can absolutely rip. Like the death growls on here are truly something to behold. The power, the force with which they're like belted out, it is like it's a masterful performance really, but also his clean vocals are quite good really. He actually can sing, and the alternation between heavy and light on here, it really sets this album off. It's a very well balanced album, I think, between some kind of lighter acoustic elements and the just crushing brutality of the rest of it. It makes a nice effect, and I gotta say, this is not a feel good album. This is not feel good stuff, y'all. This is very dark. You might even say some of this is depressing because, like the lyrics on here, I've always appreciated November's Doom's lyrics because they're very very poetic, and I mean that like literally they feel like poetry from like Edgar Allan Poe or something from like the Gothic era. They're very poetic, but it's also very dark. It's kind of just like staring into the abyss. And again, the contrast between the clean singing and the brutal death growls, it's very memorable, I think. The title track on here, the Pale Haunt Departure, just absolute banger, and also the Dead Leaf Echo, it just rips. This is again probably my favorite death metal album of all time. Paul Coeur is probably my favorite death metal vocalist. I love November's Doom. This is my favorite album by them. If you've never heard of this group and you're into that kind of music, definitely give them a look because again, it's both brutal but beautiful. It is brutal, you might say. Yeah, November's Doom, The Pale Haunt Departure, an underrated gem of an album, I would say. And then we have The Poison by Bullet for My Valentine. This is just like, you know, peak 2000s metalcore. Like, what can I say more about The Poison? Now, I'm not going to defend the songwriting on this album, which is in some instances quite cringe inducing, you might say. But musically, this album shreds. And, I'm a sucker for 2000s metalcore. That's what I grew up on, right? And this is one of the best examples of that, I think. It's again lyrically, it can be very juvenile at times, not like in a stupid kind of way, but like in a melodramatic kind of way. The songwriting could be a little bit stronger, but musically, this just goes so hard. It does. And what I've always loved about Bullet for My Valentine is that they are a truly great guitar band. Like, you know, it feels in like the vocal delivery, it's definitely, like I said, 2000s metalcore, but like instrumentally, this feels like Metallica at sometimes. Like it feels like some 80s thrash band. And again, it just goes so hard. And by the way, if anyone has ever wondered exactly what sample is used in my intro, the "Let's Go," that's from Tears Don't Fall, just FYI. But anyway, yeah, Tears Don't Fall. Just that I love that song so much because that is a very like varied song. Like it goes through so many different sequences in that one song. And again, the lyrics on here are weak at times. It's very like kind of corny at times, but musically this is like it goes harder, I think, than a lot of other 2000s metalcore bands went because it feels like a throwback. Like you can definitely feel the influences of like Metallica and Slayer and stuff like that on here. It's a very like this is a headbanger. This is a real headbanger. Um, you know, Bullet for My Valentine has never really been a critical darling. In fact, I can't even fully defend some of their albums. I mean, I don't know that I can even fully defend this album because again, some of the lyrics are cringy as hell, but musically it just shreds. It shreds. It rocks so freaking hard. And I can come back to this album. Maybe not some of their later albums, but I can always come back to this album. Again, Tears Don't Fall. That's probably just like the quintessential Bullet for My Valentine song. But also you've got like deeper cuts like Hit the Floor, and then the other singles like Four Words to Choke Upon, and All These Things I Hate. Right? I mean, those are like just bangers. Like just this album is seriously like just chock full of bangers. I love this. This is one of my favorite 2000s metalcore albums. I love it to death, even though it's not, a perfect album. This is not a perfect band by any means, but this album it goes hard. It goes hard. It rips. I love it. So yeah, The Poison by Bullet for My Valentine, just kick ass stuff. So those were the honorable mentions. Let's get into the real list proper now with number 10. Unknown Pleasures by Joy Division. Absolute all-time classic album here. This is kind of the transition from like punk to post-punk and gothic rock. And I mean, there's not much I really need to say about this album that hasn't already been said. I mean, it's just a masterpiece. There's nothing more to say about this album than that it's just a masterpiece. I mean, now the vocals on here are not going to be for everybody's tastes. Ian Curtis was a very unique vocalist, shall we say, and the off-key singing and kind of like weird, flatly intoned vocals here are going to turn a lot of people off. But there comes a point on here, and it comes in New Dawn Fades, where the vocals truly reach a transcendent level of bad to where it actually becomes like something to marvel at. You know what I'm talking about. In New Dawn Fades, when he hits that note, when he sings the word me, you know what I'm talking about, right? Where it wavers and warbles, and like it truly reaches a transcendent level at that point. And like again, this is not going to be for everybody's taste, but this album is just like front to back full of bangers. You've got New Dawn Fades, which is just, one of Joy Division's greatest songs. And you've got She's Lost Control, with that kind of like hypnotic, repetitive drum sound. Then you've got, Shadow Play with that just fantastic guitar solo in there. But then you've also got the deeper cuts like Inner Zone, Wilderness. This is just a kind of a dreary classic album. This definitely feels like something that hailed from a cold northern English town. It feels like that. It's very cold. It feels very cold. It's kind of got that drone quality to it at some points. Again, the weird off-key singing can be a turn off, but if you can get past that, what you've got is kind of a mesmerizing album, which really does kind of chart the progression from punk to post-punk and gothic rock. I would never say that Joy Division was like the first goth rock band, but this is kind of the bridge between like Sex Pistols era punk. In fact, I think Joy Division formed, correct me if I'm wrong, I think they formed at like by the members meeting up at like a Sex Pistols concert. So you can definitely chart the course from that era of punk to like the colder, chillier post-punk into goth rock kind of sound. And I love this album. Joy Division Joy Division is a band that never made a bad album. Now, of course, that's because tragically, Ian Curtis took his own life and left us far too soon, because I feel like Joy Division could have made more great music than they did. But as it stands, they made two just all-time classic albums, and I could definitely probably have put Closer on here instead. But I feel like Unknown Pleasures is just like that's the definitive Joy Division album. It's really a landmark album. It really is, and it rocks really hard, but it also has a very unique feel to it. It's not exactly the most uplifting thing. It's kind of a downer, but it goes hard. It goes hard. What can I say? I love Joy Division. I love this album, Unknown Pleasures. So yeah, number 10, we got Unknown Pleasures by Joy Division. Number 9, October Rust by Type O Negative. That's right, we got two back-to-back goth albums here. So October Rust is, in my opinion, Type O Negative's true masterpiece. I know a lot of people would probably say Bloody Kisses, but for me, that album had some elements of like New York hardcore, which I wasn't overly fond of, whereas October Rust is much more of like a pure metal album. And for me, it's a much richer and more enjoyable experience. Peter Steele's vocals were just like S-tier stuff. He was a fantastic vocalist. We lost him far too soon, but he left us with some damn fine music. And again, October Rust, I think, is Type O Negative's finest hour. He just has so many of their best songs on it, like Love You to Death, very uncomfortably sexual song, Be My Druidess, an even more uncomfortably sexual song, and then Wolf Moon, an even more uncomfortably sexual song. And the humor on here is kind of an aspect that I think is underappreciated by a lot of listeners, because like if you listen to these songs like here on YouTube or something, you'll see lots of comments talking about how like downbeat and depressing it is. But for me, it's like borderline like comedy music. Like Type O Negative was like a borderline comedy band, because the lyrics were just so like, they were just so like tongue in cheek, so funny. And the lyrics on this album, they're so intensely sexual, but like it's not in the kind of like Motley Crue like cool way. It's like a deeply uncomfortably sexual style. of songwriting, but it just works so well. This is just such an enjoyable album. It's so slow and dirge like this is not an upbeat, fast tempo album by any means. This is slow, somber music by and large. But it's also just it's kind of got like an entrancing quality to it. And again, the lyrics on here are just like priceless. And it's just, again, I think it's Type O Negative's finest album. And they made some great albums after this. World Coming Down is also a fantastic album, but for me, October Rust is like the definitive Type O Negative album. It was the best that they ever put out, I think. It's the one I think that I go back to more because the deeper cuts on here, like Burnt Flowers Falling, oh my goodness, that song rocks. Burnt Flowers Falling, and trust me, that song is the easiest to learn in terms of the lyrics because it's just, like one or two lines repeated. But like the music, it just goes so hard. And like the overall experience with this, it's such a rich experience because it's funny, it rocks, but it's also kind of got that like entrancing dirge like quality to it. It's just such a great album. It really is. And it may be overshadowed somewhat by Bloody Kisses, and that may be a shame because again, I really do think that October Rust is their finest hour as a band. So yeah, coming in at number 9, October Rust by Type O Negative. Number 8, Pyromania by Def Leppard, probably the most lighthearted thing on the list. So, in the 1980s, Def Leppard put out those two back-to-back all-time classic albums, being this album Pyromania and the follow-up Hysteria. And a lot of people might rank Hysteria above Pyromania, but not me. No, not me. For me, Pyromania is the best Def Leppard album, and I have a rationale to explain why that is. So when Def Leppard started out back in the late 1970s, they were very much in that like new wave of British heavy metal, and they were with some like blues rock elements as well. And then they eventually graduated into the glam metal sound for which they are most famous, and Pyromania captures the best of both worlds. Now, I'll put it this way: Hysteria is an album which is very much for the ladies, but Pyromania is the album which is for the boys. It's got much more of an edge to it than Hysteria. It's not quite as glammy. It's a little bit more raw. It's still got that kind of loose and easy feel to it, but good Lord, does this album rock so freaking hard. This album's just fun. There is no better word that I can apply to this album than the word fun. That is what this album is, start to finish. It is just fun. And like the singles on here are just, again, all-time classics, like Too Late for Love, that kind of dark, surprisingly heavy opening. And then you've got Foolin', like, oh my gosh, Foolin', the outro to that song, like the ending to that song where he really belts it out, where he says, I'm not fooling myself, with the no, that kind of thing. It goes so hard. And Rock of Ages, like, don't even get me started. Like, don't you even get me started on Rock of Ages. That truly might take the cake as like the greatest song ever written. Like, it really might be. The Rock of Ages, like, you heard it here first. Rock of Ages might be the greatest song of all time. I'm just throwing that out there. It might be, it might not be, but it very well could be. But this album it is wall to wall bangers. The only like arguably weak track on here is that Actions Not Words, or Action Not Words, whatever it is. That song I maybe could live without, but other than that, this album is absolutely flawless. And it has that just epic centerpiece song, Die Hard the Hunter. Like, oh my goodness, this album, this is just like the 1980s, encapsulated an album like this. It's just so fun. It's just so lighthearted and carefree, and it just rocks so damn hard. Again, you can't put this on and not have a smile on your face because it's just fun. It's just fun. Again, Hysteria is definitely like the more, I would say, feminine album because it's definitely got that kind of um, it's got more glam to it. It's very much more polished, but it also has some weaker tracks, like the back half of Hysteria, other than the title track. Some of those songs really aren't that great, but that is not the case with Pyromania. Again, the only arguably weak song on this is that Action Not Words, or Actions Not Words. Other than that, this album truly is flawless. It's just an absolute masterpiece, and it's just so fun. It is just so fun. Like, you can't not rock out to this album. So yeah, coming in at number 8, we got Pyromania by Def Leppard. Number 7, The Number of the Beast by Iron Maiden. You knew there had to be a Maiden album on here somewhere. If you know me. If you know me, then you knew there had to be a Maiden album on here somewhere. And it was honestly kind of hard to choose which one because there are just so many classic Maiden albums that I could have chosen. I know a lot of people would probably have put Power Slave on here instead, and I very well could have. But for me, the number of the beast edges it out. This is nothing short of a landmark album. This truly might be, in all honesty, like the definitive heavy metal album. Uh, it really blew the doors off in a way, and it was also, I think, one of the albums that kind of became famous for being like burned by some religious groups. Kind of one of those albums that you might not have wanted your parents to know that you were listening to, even though there's literally nothing on this album that is in any way, um, uh, you know, devious or satanic. There is literally nothing on here that's bad, but that the name of the album and the cover art kind of got some people thinking that it wasn't something for the big ears of little pitchers, as they say. But this album, for me, is the definitive Maiden album, not only because it was the first album with Dickinson on vocals, but also because I think it's the tightest album that they ever put out. Now, the only song on here that I would say is like weak is maybe Gangland. That song I maybe could live without, but other than that, I think this album is just impeccable, basically. And another reason why I had to choose this over like Power Slave or Peace of Mind is because this has "Hallowed Be Thy Name" on it. "Hallowed Be Thy Name" is uh, possibly the greatest song that Iron Maiden ever wrote, in my opinion, because it proved that metal could be like not like dumb. Like, it proved that metal could be really sophisticated because the lyrics of that song, like, man, uh, that was really game changing. I think back in the day, the lyrics were very sophisticated again and poetic, but the music just freaking rips. It really does. And like even on the deeper cuts, like 22 Acacia Avenue, again, it just shreds, and you can feel that kind of classic rock influence on it. The guitar solos on here are just like phenomenal stuff. It's just great work on here. There's just not a lot that I feel like I can say about this album that hasn't already been said. It's just, it is a definitive work of heavy metal music. The album cover is just iconic, and it also again kind of got some people thinking it was a little bit more devious than it was. But the music, the vocals, and the lyrics, again, the lyrics on here really took things to a new level. Like, we know that Iron Maiden are like some of the greatest lyricists in heavy metal, and this album reminds us why. Because again, uh, you got stuff on here like, again, the title track, which is based on a classic poem. And again, the guitar solo in that song just freaking rips. And then again, you've got Hallowed Be Thy Name, which is like a very, very remarkable song in terms of its lyrics and like the crescendo that it ultimately builds up to. This is just like on another level. It was on another level for the time in which it came out. Like, I don't think any band of this genre had reached as far and reached as high as Maiden did when they came out with this album. Again, it's just all time classic album. So yeah, coming in at number 7, we got The Number of the Beast by Iron Maiden. Number 6, A Cold Fire from the One I Loved by Dorian Lives. So this is an album that I don't think very many people are probably aware of at all. That by a band which I don't think very many people are aware of at all. And that is a crying ass shame because this band and this album rocked so hard. They came, they dropped this album, and then nobody ever heard from them again. Dorian Lives was a band that I came across years ago. This album came out, I think, in 2013, and that was it. They disappeared, and they have not released any more music since. And again, that is an utter shame because this album is fantastic. It really is. Now, there's nothing particularly revolutionary or innovative about this album. It's just really melodic rock music with a kind of romantic flair to it. But if you're into that, you should definitely search this album out. I think you can listen to the whole thing like here on YouTube, and you really should because this album is great. It really is. I don't even know who the members of the band were. I don't know who the singer was, but he had a really great voice. The lyrics on here are really great. They're really poetic lyrics. Again, with kind of a romantic flair to some of it. It's super, super melodic, like infectiously melodic. It's just a great, great rock album. It really is. It's just the vocals are great. The lyrics are great. The music is just infectious and catchy. It is just such a shame that this band dropped this album, and then disappeared off the face of the earth. And it feels like I'm the only person that even is aware of them. And again, if you're into that kind of music, you should definitely search this album out because it's great. Now, listen to the title track. Definitely listen to A Cold Fire from the One I Loved. Definitely. Again, kind of a romantically inclined song, but just really great stuff. Listen to Sound of Her Voice. That may be my favorite song off this album, Sound of Her Voice. Listen to that. Shores. I mean, it's just such a shame that this band disappeared and that they never got the recognition that I think this album warrants, because this is a banger of an album filled with wall-to-wall bangers. I truly don't think there's a weak song on here. That opener, Shiver, Breathe, Repeat, like, it's just what an opener. Like, you know you're in for something great when you listen to that song. And the rest of the album doesn't disappoint. I don't really know how else to, like, you know, describe this album. It's just really great, melodic, very melodic, modern rock with a really great singer and some really great songwriting on here as well. If you're into that music, once again, search it out because maybe if enough people become aware of this band, then they might come back. There's always a slight chance that they might come back. I've loved this album ever since I heard this many, many years ago. I guess back when it originally came out is about when I came across them. And I've been a fan ever since, even if there are very few people who are aware of this band. I would love to be able to turn some more people on to this group. So go check out Dorian Lives and their one album, A Cold Fire from the One I Loved, because it is a kick-ass album, in my opinion. Number 5, Confessions of the Fallen by Staind. So this is one of those albums that I warned you about at the beginning that you might be like, really? Really? This is one of your favorite albums? Yes, it is. This is also probably the most recent album to appear on this list. This is, as of this recording anyway, the most recent album that Staind has put out. It was their big comeback album after their lengthy hiatus, and what a comeback it was. Now, if you know me, you'll know that I am a huge fan of 2000s butt rock. I love me some good butt rock. I don't even care how much hate this kind of band gets. This kind of, again, 2000s radio rock band gets. Staind is a great band. I think Aaron Lewis is a phenomenal vocalist. And the most shocking thing about this album is that his vocals still have it. Like, his voice has still got it. And it really shines on this album. Now, the funny thing about Confessions of the Fallen is that I wasn't like a huge fan of Staind before I picked this up. I mean, I like Staind, definitely. I grew up listening to their music, you know, like songs like It's Been a While, For You, that kind of stuff, and So Far Away, what have you. Like, I mean, I grew up listening to their music, but I wasn't like a huge fan. But I saw this album and I kind of picked it up on a whim, and oh, I'm so glad that I did, because this is some truly primo butt rock right here. I'm gonna say it right now. Lowest in Me is the best song that Staind ever recorded. If you don't think so, you're just wrong. I'm sorry. Lowest in Me is the best song that Staind has ever recorded. It absolutely freaking rips. And the rest of this album really doesn't disappoint, honestly. There's really not a bad song on this album. I think it's 10 tracks, and it's 10 quality tracks, I think. I honestly don't think there's a weak song on here, really. And another thing that sets this album apart is that Staind wisely chose to change it up a little bit when they came back by adding some light electronic elements to this, most notably on tracks like Was Any of It Real? Another great song on here. And it really works. It really works. It changed the dynamic enough. It changed the dynamic up enough to make it feel just fresh enough so it doesn't seem like they were just doing the same thing over and over. And that's kind of the major criticism that butt rock bands like Staind and Creed and what have you always got, is that it's just kind of the same thing over and over again, that the songs are very formulaic, very safe, kind of paint by numbers. And, you know, that definitely is a valid criticism, but hey, you know, some of us like that kind of music. I like that kind of music. I grew up on an audio diet of butt rock and 2000s metalcore. And I love this album. Like, this album really took me back because it is such a throwback to like 2000s butt rock. But again, I'm a sucker for that. I really am. And again, Lewis's voice is still like on point. He's still got it. And the songwriting on here was tight. Like, some of Staind's lyrics, I get why some people criticize them, because it's kind of like woe is me, sad boy stuff, like over and over. But there's not so much of that on here. Like, there's definitely kind of some gloomier introspective stuff on here, but it's not some of the cornier stuff like they have written in the past. Like this, it's kind of got an angrier tone to it, like Lowest in Me, and like the title track Confessions of the Fallen. Like, that is honestly a pretty heavy song, and it's got some screaming on here too, and that's something that I never recalled Staind really being known for when I listened to them, like back when I was a kid. The screaming, I was like, that's new. And honestly, I think it just really came out. Again, this is the album on here, more than any other perhaps, where you're like probably shaking your head being like, really, this like generic butt rock album is one of his favorite albums? Yes, it is. It honestly is. I freaking love this. I think this is by far the best album that Staind has ever put out. It is, again, I honestly don't think there's a weak track on here. It rocks. It feels fresh, like they didn't just come back and pick up right where they left off. They changed it up just enough to where it has kind of a fresh feeling to it. I love it. I absolutely love it. This is, yeah, definitely one of my favorite albums. I don't care how much flack I get. I love Butt Rock. I love Stained. I love Stained, and I love Confessions of the Fallen. Number 4, Ride the Lightning by Metallica. So this is another instance where I'm going to say that this is a band's best album, even though I recognize that there is another album by that band which a lot of people, if not most people, would say is actually their best. That being, in this case, Master of Puppets. But I am here to tell you that Ride the Lightning is better than Master of Puppets. It is Metallica's finest hour, and I can explain why. First of all, Fight Fire with Fire is a vastly better opener than Battery. Now, that's not to say that Battery from Master of Puppets is a bad song, but Fight Fire with Fire is hands down the best opening track that Metallica ever recorded, because good heavens, that riffing. Like, it starts out with that kind of Baroque acoustic instrumental, then it segues into that just absolutely buzzsaw riffing. I mean, we're talking about thrash riffing so fast and intense that it sounds like an angry bumblebee, and I am here for it. That song just melts your freaking face off. It really does. Like, I can only imagine being, back in like 1984 or 5 or whenever this came out, and hearing that coming out of your speakers. Like, that was some next level shit. But also, um, uh, the reason, another reason why Ride the Lightning is better in my opinion than Master of Puppets is because the Call of Cthulhu, or Cthulhu as it is spelled on here, is hands down the best instrumental piece that Metallica ever recorded. Orion is not that great of an instrumental. You heard it here first. I'm gonna say it. I don't care how much flack I get. Orion is not that great of an instrumental. The Call of Cthulhu on Ride the Lightning is really Metallica's finest instrumental piece, because it really like takes you on a journey. Like, it changes. Like, I mean, it goes through so many different sequences. The time, the tempo changes so much over the course of it. I mean, it's just their best instrumental. I don't even think you can argue that. But there's just not a weak track on this album. There's not. Now, a lot of people might say that Escape is a weak track. In fact, James Hetfield might say that Escape is a weak track, but it's not. It is absolutely not. It is the weakest track on here in comparison to the other songs, but it is still a good song. It's still a solid track. It still holds up. There's not a weak song on here. Again, this is Metallica's best album in my opinion. The songwriting was stepped up majorly from Kill 'Em All. The lyrics on Kill 'Em All were kind of juvenile, and there is some juvenilia in some places on this album, namely like in Escape. But by and large, the lyrics on here are much more mature. You've got For Whom the Bell Tolls. I mean, I mean, that's just like peak Metallica. And then you've got Creeping Death. Just again, also peak Metallica. And then you've got Fade to Black, and they really switched it up on that with that, slow acoustic intro. But then that part in Fade to Black where it like drops down with that dun dun dun, you know what I'm talking about. Just again, peak Metallica. Metallica is, I feel like if you say that one of your favorite albums is a Metallica album, it has to be And Justice for All is like the cutoff. Like, if you say that any album after that is one of your favorite albums, like you're going into like poser territory, because the Black Album is like, oh my gosh, it's just the most overplayed thing. I never want to hear any of those singles ever again, because you hear them like 3 times daily on rock radio. It's just done to death. But Ride the Lightning, again, I think it's just Metallica's finest hour. 8 tracks, I think it's 8 tracks, and not a weak one on here. Not a weak one on here from the first to the last. It's just solid stuff. Hetfield's vocals, I think, are better than on the first album. Now, I would never say that James Hetfield, or really I would never say that any of the singers of the big 4 thrash bands are like great singers. But Hetfield is kind of like, I guess, the most like the closest perhaps to being a good singer out of them. And his vocals on here are pretty good. It's just, I mean, I struggle to come up with more adjectives and more accolades to apply to this album because it's just an all-time classic, and I think it is Metallica's finest album. Uh, it's better than Master of Puppets, in my opinion. It's better than Injustice for All. It's better than the Black Album. It's better than anything else that they ever put out, and at this point probably ever will put out. I love this album to death. This is truly, this is like peak. This is just peak. There's no better word that I can apply to it than peak. Ride the Lightning, yeah, just Metallica's finest, I think. Number 3, As Daylight Dies by Killswitch Engage. So I told you that I was a fan of 2000s metalcore, and it doesn't get much better than this right here. Now, this is yet another instance, and I'm kind of sensing a theme, honestly, of me listing an album by a band where I think that most people would probably list another album by this band in lieu of this one. In this case, probably being End of Heartache. But I've got to tell you, I've never been a huge fan of End of Heartache. Like, the title track on that album is like, I mean, that may be like the definitive Killswitch song. But besides that, honestly, there's not a lot on that album that I come back to. But As Daylight Dies is a different story. Now, I want to say something else for this album. I do not consider As Daylight Dies to be Killswitch Engage's best album. Like, their best album, their landmark album, like the definitive Killswitch album, the one where they really made their mark on the genre, has got to be Alive or Just Breathing. And I love that album to death as well. I mean, I love that album to death. But my personal favorite album of theirs, I think, would probably be this one, As Daylight Dies. I think this is probably their most melodic album. And it also has The Arms of Sorrow on it, which is like probably my favorite song by them. Howard's vocals are just fantastic on this album. The songwriting, I think, is really great. Again, Arms of Sorrow is just like my favorite Killswitch song. And it's so funny because there's like an interview with Adam that I think you can see on YouTube here where he's talking about this album, and he actually expresses some like regret over this album, where he says like the back half of it is kind of weak, or that he wishes he could redo some of it. And I just don't get it, because I think this album is so strong, like start to finish. Like, I honestly don't see any weak points on it. Like the singles, like Arms of Sorrow, just again, killer track. And then of course My Curse. That may be like the second biggest Killswitch song after End of Heartache. But even the deeper cuts like Reject Yourself, Let the Bridges Burn, and the almost title track Daylight Dies, it's just all great. It's just all great stuff. It's so melodic, it rocks so hard, but it's also got that metalcore edge to it. The screaming is just so on point. I just freaking love this album. Again, I don't think that 2000s metalcore gets much better than this. And 2006 was a great year for metalcore, because not only did you have As Daylight Dies come out, but you also had All That Remains come out with their seminal album, The Fall of Ideals, which I also love to death as well, but not quite so much as this. From 2004 to 2006, you had a really great run for 2000s metalcore. You had Killswitch Engage in 2004 come out with End of Heartache. Then in 2005, you had Bullet for My Valentine come out with Poison. And then you also had Unearthed come out with The Oncoming Storm in there somewhere. And then in 2006, you got this album and The Fall of Ideals. And then also you got, I think there were a couple of one or two albums by God Forbid in that same timeline somewhere. Again, this was just like a great run of years for metalcore in the 2000s. And this is my favorite of the bunch. Again, I would never say that this is like the best Killswitch album, but it is my favorite Killswitch album. As Daylight Dies, the almost title track is just such a great opener. And then, of course, My Curse, just what a ripper that one is. And then Arms of Sorrow is once again just like maybe my favorite song by them overall. But even the deeper cuts are great. I just don't think there's much to complain about on this album. I think I think it all pretty much holds up. It's aged pretty well. I love this album to death. So yeah, no doubt, As Daylight Dies by Killswitch Engage. Number 2, Love by The Cult. Now, The Cult is a band that I don't think ever got to be as big as they really deserved to be. They were such a unique band when they started. They eventually sold out after this album and became, for a time, a very shitty Guns N' Roses clone. But this album right here is peak Cult. I came across this album in a store and it was marked down to like $8. And I got to say, that may have been like the best $8 that I ever spent because holy smokes, this album is awesome. And again, The Cult was such a unique band. They were kind of a goth band in a way, like an late 70s, early 80s English goth band kind of, but they had that Native American mystical quality to their music. And nowhere is that more apparent than on this album. You've got the opening track, Nirvana. Just what a song. I mean, what an opener. And then you've also got Rain on here. That may be like the biggest song off this album is Rain. That was the song I think that was included in, was it Grand Theft Auto 5? Yeah, I think that song was on the in-game radio in Grand Theft Auto 5. I probably ran over a lot of pedestrians to that song. But this is also an album which I don't think has any weak tracks on it. Now, the song Revolution, okay, I could live without that song, but other than that, this album is perfect. And oh my gosh, I love this album so much. It was that again, their sound on here was just so unique. They deserved to be so much bigger than they were. And I think if you put a gun to my head and like demanded to know who my favorite guitarist is, it might be Billy Duffy. It very well might. And I'm going to tell you why. Because the title track on this album, Love, the ending sequence to that song is, for my money, the greatest thing that has ever been done with a guitar by human hands. And, you know, if you've never heard that song, if you've never heard this album, which, I mean, a lot of people maybe haven't because The Cult, I mean, they weren't like totally under the radar. They had some hits after they sold out, at least they did. But they were never that big. But so if you haven't heard the title track Love off this album, drop what you're doing after this video and go listen to it and listen to that last like minute and a half of that song. Holy smokes. I mean, that is truly the greatest sound that I have ever heard produced by a guitar. And I don't know that that will ever change, honestly. That is truly, I think, the greatest thing that has ever been done with a guitar by human hands. But also, you've got that epic closer, Black Angel. I mean, again, just epic closer to an epic album. And you've also got songs like The Phoenix that sounds like The Doors, but it sounds like The Doors if The Doors didn't suck like The Doors did, because The Doors did suck. I'm sorry if you haven't realized that by now, but The Doors were actually a pretty shitty band. But The Cult did The Doors like The Doors wanted to do The Doors. Like, again, if The Doors weren't such a shitty band, they would have sounded like The Cult, because The Cult took that kind of psych rock sound and infused it with like Native American mysticism, and with just some all-time great guitar work, and they put out this absolute masterpiece of an album. And it is an album which, while not wholly unknown, is unfortunately kind of underrated, because this should have like sold like gangbusters when it came out. Again, if you've never heard the title track Love, if you've never heard that guitar outro to that song, you need to. Like, you cannot, please do not die without hearing that song and what the guitar in that song sounds like. Please don't go to your grave without having heard that. It's just beyond freaking words. And again, the opening track, Nirvana, uh, just again, I struggle to even come up with adjectives to describe this music. It's so freaking good. It's just amazing. Again, probably the best $8 I ever spent. It's just such a great album. I mean, such a great album. Please go listen to this album. Please go listen to the title track of this album, because it's just so fantastic. It sounded like nothing else of that era. Again, it sounded like a kind of Doors throwback, except if the Doors weren't such a shit band. It sounds like the Doors done so much better. The Cult was such a great band. They're still out there, I think. They're still making music, but they're well past the era in which they would have achieved, in which they should have achieved great fame. Yeah, and they had a couple hits, but they're a largely unknown band, and that is such a shame, because Love is one of the greatest rock albums in history. It is. It is one of the greatest rock albums. I would put this up against anything out by the Beatles or the Rolling Stones. You might think that's a little presumptuous, but I mean it, heart and soul. I would put Love by the Cult up against Revolver or Goat's Head Soup, what have you. This is truly one of the greatest rock albums of all time. Please go listen to it if you haven't. Please go listen to the title track and just, sit and listen in awe to that guitar in that title track, because it is truly the greatest sound that a guitar has ever made. Yeah. So yeah, number 2, Love by the Cult. Number 1. Well, I told you I was a sucker for butt rock, and I did not lie. And so, for my number 1 favorite album of all time, I don't think that I could have, in good conscience, chosen anything other than the generation defining masterwork that is All the Right Reasons by Nickelback. I don't think I would be remiss in calling this album my generation's Abbey Road. Like, that is the level of impact that this album had. I mean, it sold like gangbusters. It's like one of the best selling albums of all time, I think. And there were so many singles released from this. Like, every song was a banger. I mean, Side of a Bullet, If Everyone Cared, Saving Me, and Photograph. How could we forget What the Hell Is That on Joey's Head? I mean, how could we forget such lyrical sophistication? How could we forget such lyrical sophistication as they think they'll get inside her with every drink they buy her? Like, I mean, this is like, again, this is my generation's Abbey Road right here. Nickelback's All the Right Reasons is the album that defined my childhood. It is the greatest butt rock album ever released. It's certainly by sales, it is. And again, it's just an absolute masterpiece. It is a masterpiece of butt rock. And of course, I'm just yanking your giggle stick with this. This is not my favorite album of all time. Although I will confess, in all earnestness, that I do have something of a soft spot for All the Right Reasons. It did honestly kind of define my childhood in a way. But no, All the Right Reasons is not my favorite album of all time. And actually, my favorite album of all time is the self titled album by Denial Machine. Now, if you have never heard of Denial Machine, that's not surprising because this is another band that came, that saw, that rocked, that dropped this one album and a brief EP and then disappeared off the face of the earth. This band was never big, and they were never well known, but they should have been. They deserve to be, because when it comes to 2000s metalcore, it does not get better, in my humble or not so humble opinion, than Denial Machine. Now, there's nothing really revolutionary about this album. It's pretty standard 2000s metalcore slash groove metal. But this album means a lot to me. This album has a place near and dear in my heart. I will always remember how I came across this album. I was a kid. It was in the summer. I was at my grandmother's house trying to stream music on AOL dial-up and struggling, and I came across this album, and the rest is history. The rest is history. This album rocked my world, and I absolutely love it to death. Again, this band formed, I think, in like 2009. They released this album and an EP called The Gainsaying of Korra in 2010, I think. And then they disappeared, never to be heard from again, apparently. But what an album. I mean, what an album. If you are into 2000s metalcore, you owe it to yourself to check out the self-titled album by Denial Machine, because this shit rips right here. Please go listen to This Burden. This Burden it's just an all-time great metalcore song. It is an all-time great metalcore song. Also listen to Ide Fix. I think I'm pronouncing that right. I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce that title, but Ide Fix, I think. Listen to that song. Listen to Ide Fix. Listen to that song. It is just absolute peak 2000s metalcore. And also the song entitled The Denial Machine. That song, oh my goodness, what that song means to me now. So the name Denial Machine is a reference to like global warming, I think. And the song on this album, The Denial Machine, it's definitely about global warming. It's about global warming. And moreover, it's kind of about questioning the narrative about global warming. That's right. There may be some climate change denial on this album, but listening to that song now after living through COVID, that song has a whole new meaning to me. Like the lyrics to that song took on a whole new dimension after living through COVID. There is a line in that song that runs, "God protect us from those who want to save the world," or "God protect us from those who would save the world." That I should just have that tattooed across my chest now after living through the horrendous debacle that was COVID. But I'm getting off topic. Anyway, this album is my favorite album of all time, and I may be truly like one of only a handful of people in the world out there that actually know about this album. Like nobody knows about Denial Machine. Nobody knows about this band. Nobody knows about their music. They dropped this and one EP and then disappeared. But it doesn't get much better than this in terms of 2000s metalcore. Listen to This Burden. Listen to Ide Fix. Listen to the song The Denial Machine. Listen to Worms of the Earth, Whom the Gods Would Destroy. I mean, this album is front to back, wall to wall bangers. The vocalist, whoever he is or was, is awesome. I mean, freaking awesome. The screams are incredible, but the cleans are so soaring. Like his clean melodic singing, his clean singing is so soaring, so anthemic. The choruses in these songs are just awesome. The instrumental work is just it's just fantastic. This album is amazing to me, and I know I recognize that a lot of people will not find it that amazing, because if you're not a big fan of 2000s metalcore, you're just gonna be like, this is just like Kill Switch Light. This is like Kill Switch ripoff. No, this is better than Kill Switch Engage. This is better than Unearth. This is better than All That Remains. This is better than Bullet for My Valentine. This is better than all those bands, in my humble or not so humble opinion. This is my favorite album of all time, and it's so near and dear to me because I'm literally one of the few people on the planet that is even aware of this band and this album. You can listen to a lot of it here on YouTube, and I would highly encourage you to go do so. It's just a fantastic album. It is. I love this album. I struggle to come up with more adjectives and more praises to heap upon this album. It means the world to me. I've loved this album ever since I was a kid. But like I say, now after living through COVID, listening to the song on this album called "The Denial Machine," those lyrics mean so much more to me now than they did listening to them as a kid. This album, it just rocks. It just rocks so hard. It's such a great album, and I would highly encourage anyone listening who is into this type of music to go check out this album, check out this band, because maybe, just maybe, they might come back. It's like the Lorax, right? Plant a forest and protect it from axes that hack, and maybe, just maybe, the Lorax will come back or whatnot. It's like that with this band. Check out this album, start some buzz, maybe, get a following going, and maybe, just maybe, Denial Machine will return and grace us with more music, or grace me with more music, because I am like carrying the torch for this band out here, people. This album means the world to me. I've loved it since I was a kid. It rocks so hard. It is like the pinnacle of 2000s metalcore, in my opinion. It is such a crying ass shame that not more people know about this band and this album. It's so great. Please check it out. Yes, my number one favorite album of all time is the self-titled album by Denial Machine. So this has been the list of my favorite albums of all time at present anyway. I hope you have enjoyed, and I hope moreover that I have been able to turn you on to some music out there that you perhaps have not heard of or been overly familiar with. Definitely check out these albums and groups that I have listed if you have not. I'd love to be able to turn on some people to new music out there. Be sure to let me know down in the comments what you have thought, what your favorite albums are. I would love to hear and be turned on to new music myself. And as always, if you have enjoyed anything you've seen or heard here today, remember to hit that like button and subscribe. I would really appreciate it. And until next time, peace.